Dear friends, thank you for supporting this channel on Patreon to join our growing family of donors, now 59 patrons strong. And remember, once we reach 100 active patrons, we will start sending out a 1-ounce U.S. Silver Eagle, autographed by your host, Dunnigan Kaiser, to one active supporter each and every month. Thanks for taking a minute to pitch in by going to patreon.com/ReluctantPreppers and pledging your support today. Thanks very much.
Hey Reluctant Preppers, this is showing you just how easy it is to purchase silver without paying any premium over spot price. You just go to sdbullion.com/RP, scroll down and enter the special code to get silver without any premium, and they'll mail it to your mailbox, discreetly packaged. Inside you'll find a beautiful 10-ounce bar of fine silver, and you are able to purchase that and have it and add it to your stack and your collection without paying any premium, and you're supporting Reluctant Preppers along the way. Thanks.
As a responsible person with growing concerns for your privacy and personal liberty, you want to know where we're headed and what you can do about it. We ask the experts what you need to do to take prudent and responsible action to safeguard your family's wealth and well-being, and what basic first steps will help you to be aware and prepared. ReluctantPreppers.com.
Welcome back, Reluctant Preppers. We are with our off-grid medical doctor, J. Nielsen MD. He has a survival compound in Haiti capable of supporting dozens of families. It's also a Christian mission, and he's here with us on Reluctant Preppers to talk about a topic that increasing numbers of families are dealing with. That is the topic of allergies. We're going to look at what's the source and cause, why are they apparently on the increase, what are reasonable ways to take care of ourselves when we're affected by allergies, and then always we want to take the prepper angle of saying, if we didn't have access to our neighborhood pharmacy, clinic, and hospital, how does that change the picture of how we're going to manage to live life in ease and comfort, or at least reasonably, despite allergies? So, Dr. Nielsen, once again, thank you for joining us here on Reluctant Preppers.
It's a pleasure. And that was such an excellent introduction that I think he'll just let you sit and talk.
Actually, I have no idea how to answer any of those questions.
Oh, okay. Well, then we'll do what I do and we'll make something up, right?
That's fine.
This is not one of my strong suits. One of the problems that I had 25 years ago when I went into this field is my partner was an allergist, and I was his specialty. And I was the specialist in pain, and we both did the rest of it. And so the one big gap in my life for my first formative 10 years of learning this field, I left to my partner. And I see that every day. I've been playing catch up for 15 years. It's also a field that is so dynamic and moving so quickly that no one is going to stay up. Okay, nobody's going to stay caught up. It's going to be tough. But let's start out first. We clearly, for the last 30 to 40 years, have been in an ascendant incidence of allergies.
Right.
You go back to my childhood, and chronic and recurrent middle ear infections with nasal congestion was very common. And any good family doctor solved it in one move. He said, get off dairy, and it went away. It was pretty simple. We are not meant to ever drink cow's milk. Okay, cow's milk is absolutely the only reason we have cow's milk is because a cow makes 2.5-3 gallons twice a day, and economically that's a great thing. And if you're doing camel, which is perfect milk, or monkey milk, which is perfect milk, or goat's milk, which tastes like crap but is good milk, we wouldn't be having these problems. But the antigenicity, the ability of bovine protein to mess us up, comes at two levels. It's antigenicity and the fact that there is casein in that milk, and casein is the other gluten. It changes the morphones in your brain, it changes gut permeability, not as an allergen, but as a direct cellular toxin. And so bovine milk is just a bad idea.
Does it get any better when you make it into cheese? Or is it the same?
Anytime that you take the casein out, you're going to improve it. What you're really doing when you're making cheese is you're really taking sugar and water out, so it isn't helping that much. Okay? Cooking it helps. That breaks it down. Heat breaks it down some. But basically, you really have to drop back, and I always go to the Paleolithic man. Anytime you want to ask the question, who are we supposed to be? The Paleolithic man was not leading a cow around, which would have attracted all the saber-toothed tigers, okay? He was barely capable of doing hunter-gathering, and he sure didn't have a dairy product. And everybody who had milk was up to a toddler, and mom was lactating constantly, and the babies that didn't die stayed on breast until a third baby knocked the 1, 2 up off the breast. 2 breasts, 2 kids, and that was all the milk you got, and you were done. There was no dairy in our diet. And so this entire let's stop down at the ice cream shop, eat cheese, and put cream in our coffee thing is way, way outside what we expect. And so there's no protein that is more antigenic. There have been many, many really neat studies, and unfortunately, pediatricians have been very slow to accept allergies as a major factor in children. So when I was in practice in the 80s, all my allergists called, all my pediatricians called all allergies a persistent head cold. And all children were born with no sinuses and never developed them, and nothing. You could make no argument they didn't have a reason why it wasn't allergies. And the allergists and the ear, nose, and throat people were very interested, and the family docs were very interested. But because the pediatricians were the keepers of the flame on research, we kind of got left out. But Europe was very interested. And Europe did a really, really neat study in which they recruited thousands of children with chronic and recurrent middle ear infections, and they told the family that they were going to provide free supplements, and that they wanted all the children to take the supplements that were sent every month. It was just a part of the program that they never changed, okay? Just a part of taking good health. That wasn't true. This was a trick, and it was good research. And then they told everybody, we want you all completely dairy-free. And all the middle ear infections and congestion went away. And then, at random points, the supplements got turned into milk powder, into capsules. And within 14 days, the group that got switched developed middle ear infections. So they proved that milk is the primary cause of chronic and recurrent middle ear infections. Nice research. Okay, well done. You got to give them credit for that. And all 3 of my kids were milk allergic. Julia had severe middle ear infections. Ben had severe asthma, and Lex had severe eczema. And you go, well, what's the deal with that? Well, what they really all had was atopy, meaning that their immune system was upregulated. And they each picked a different target organ. Lex, you could give him a little bit of milk chocolate and all his skin would peel off, okay? And Ben was just pure asthma. He wouldn't even get congestion, and Julia was just pure congestion and very little asthma. And we had a strong family history, so it's not a surprise that we had a lot of allergic kids. And so I raised all of my kids on goat's milk. But the problem is when you've got a 1-year-old and they're on 2% milk or Enfamil or, whatever's that milk-based product that is our shortcut, right?
Or worse, a soy-based product, but go ahead.
Yeah, worse yet. Well done. When you hand that kid goat's milk, they're not drinking it, especially if it's Myersburg and it came out of a can. If you give it to a baby from the time they're born,
sure,
they don't know. Okay, and what I would do is I would do 10-to-1 goat's milk, and over 6 weeks I'd go 2 to 8, 7 to 3, and you can sometimes trick them. Mostly those kids start eating all their solids and refusing liquids, and you end up on water. And so this is a very important concept of that we need to identify what happened after that, because more allergens came along. Kids were more allergic than the story I just told, starting about after my kids were grown. And why was that? Well, a lot of things have happened. One of the things that has been blamed, if I remember correctly, was these somatomedins that we put inject into dairy cows so they made more milk, okay?
Bovine stimulating hormone.
Yeah, the bovine stimulating hormone, okay? And you know, that actually it ended up a book, Milk the Deadly Toxin, written by a guy who watched the Senate investigate that product. He walked out of the Senate investigating committees and said, milk is dead. They're not going to be allowed to use it anymore. And was just horrified when it went on the market. Obviously, the bribes all went through. And we don't really have it today. And the reason is not because it was good science or because dairy farmers developed ethics. It was because it caused so much mastitis in the cows because they were being forced to overproduce that they got so many infections that so many cows died that it offset the cost of increased milk. It didn't work. And so we don't have it today. But we had a period in there when that stuff was in there. And my daughter was 13 years old when somatomedins got put in milk. Her mother was a B cup. My mother was a B cup. And by the time Julia was 13 and a half, she was a double D and going up, and she looked like a cow. She had great big blue veins all over her breasts, and she was drinking a gallon of milk a day. And I had learned this, and I put her on organic milk. And now this is a kid who was allergic to milk, but not anymore. And her breasts dropped from double D to C, but of course, because they were big, she looked like she'd had 9 children and ruined her breasts. And so that was estimated to be one of the big let's mess with everybody's allergens things. The next big thing that we figured out was this was the era in which we learned the word probiotic. This was coming out of the 80s. When probiotics first came out, pediatricians just freaked. They said, oh, these are awful. Nobody should ever take them. And regular medicine was against them. As soon as some of them were prescription and they could figure out how to get money out of them.
Oh, okay.
Then Ally and stuff like that, then all of a sudden they became okay. And now they're everywhere. But what we really learned wasn't about probiotics. It was the fact that antibiotics caused allergies. Because of gut permeability. And so what's really going on in allergies is that if your gut, normal digestion is I chew my food into little pieces to increase surface area.
Right.
I swallow it, and pepsin and hydrochloric acid take hard proteins and turn them into softened proteins. Then they exit the stomach where bicarbonate, that was the opposite of the hydrochloric acid. The body, when it makes acid, has to make bicarbonate, is put back in to make the body neutral with digestive enzymes, which took these long proteins and cleaved them into short pieces, okay? And they were then absorbed into your bloodstream in the first few feet of your upper small bowel, where all of your vitamins are absorbed and all digestion is supposed to happen. Well, as we have messed up our gut with antibiotics and omeprazole and Pepcid and Tums and bad proteins and a million things that we've eaten, NutraSweet, and all the things that have screwed up our gut. What has happened is we've developed pancreatic insufficiency, a term we're starting to see now on TV. See your doctor if you're having gas and bloating, you have pancreatic insufficiency. And if you have pancreatic insufficiency and inadequate digestive enzymes, your proteins don't get cut into sub-antigenic size, and whole pieces of peanut or beef or seafood end up, or cow's milk, go in your bloodstream. Whole food is never, ever supposed to be in your bloodstream. So now you get an immune response to that.
Yep.
Okay. Once that you get that immune response up-regulated and it's excited, it's looking for more antigens. So then it looks for the low-hanging fruit. And the list of the most common food allergies has gotten wider over the years, but still we all know what they are. Citrus, peanut, some fish, shellfish, big deal, okay? Obviously the dairy, okay? And then it kind of, and some nuts, okay? And then it kind of scatters to the wind and goes every place, okay? And so all of these factors took one more big hit with GMO. because GMO was yet another gut leak phenomenon. And everybody comes into me and says, I've got SIBO. And I go, gosh, kind of like the honest man. I go, I don't think I know anybody who doesn't have SIBO. And they say, I want the SIBO test. And I go, okay, but you'll flunk. We all will. Okay. You know, the real thing is, how do I make your flatulence and bloating and loose stools versus constipation, both symptoms of allergies, and indigestibility and slow stomach emptying, how do I make all of that go away? I don't need a test. I need to make the patient better. And so you really look at that bad food choices followed by the advent of broad-spectrum antibiotics. Probably get to throw soy, common food allergen, soy styrenes into that mix, and then finally the GMO. And I go, we all got GMO'd before we could spell GMO.
Before we let you get off the topic of antibiotics, there's one thing when people take antibiotics knowingly to treat a disease or to reduce the risk or something, but we've been told that a lot of the meats that we might order at a restaurant or buy at the grocery store or whatever, that to accelerate the growth of those farm animals, that they may be fed hormones to accelerate their growth, but they may also, because of overcrowding and the inhumane conditions and feedlots and that sort of thing, they may be routinely broadcast treated with antibiotics, so it may be present in the food that we're eating.
And the
as well.
chickens.
Even though we're not taking it.
Yeah, chickens are commonly getting antibiotics. And that's not the big antibiotic that we're all eating. The most common antibiotic we're all eating is neomycin, okay? Kellogg's of Battle Creek, Post, and General Mills put 4 boxcar loads a week of raw neomycin in all of our wheat products because that keeps them from going bad on the shelf. And so no one should ever use Neosporin, Polysporin, Bacitracin, and neomycin, because you put that in an open wound and you're going to get a contact dermatitis. So you have that whole gut leak thing that you're taking non-absorbable antibiotics. They don't even go into your system, but you still become allergic to them and increase the gut leak. So that list is going to go on forever. There's no end to the bad things we're putting in our gut. Let's go back and let's talk about the manifestations of food allergies, because they're broader than people think. People usually speak from their family experience. So if you've had a family member with hives, they expect to get hives. Actually not that common. Most of my hives, if they're coming from allergens, usually are from preservatives and food dyes more than foods, unless it's shellfish. But we have all of the problems of asthma, allergic runny nose, sinusitis, eustachian tube dysfunction. We're going to work from the top down. Migraines, big deal. Migraines and food allergy. Asthma. We'll call it irritable bowel to stay global, okay? But bloating, diarrhea, constipation, pancreatic insufficiency, eczema, hives, and then the global symptoms: fatigue, brain fog, okay, all up there and kind of that migraine pattern. I do a lot of food allergy testing for migraine patients, and I'm amazed at how often it turns out to be my big ticket item. Food allergy testing in this country has gone through generations of work, and after we do testing, we'll talk about treatment. And in the testing phase, we used to do a thing called ALCAT or ELISA testing, but now we've gone over to a new form of testing, and it's this product right here. It's called mediated release, okay? And you can look at it at betterbloodtest.com, and there's the phone number, okay? And this is not going to be covered by insurance. Going to be about $150. It checks 180 of the most common foods. I used to do these kind of ALCAT tests, and the patient would come in and say, I get hives from strawberries and congestion from oranges and definitely can't eat shellfish, gives me asthma and terrible diarrhea and itching. And then you do this ELISA test or ALCAT test, and none of them would be on there. And I go, this test isn't valid. You know what you're allergic to.
Yeah, that's right. Mm-hmm.
Right? Okay. This test has turned out not to be that way. This test has turned out to have a very high clinical correlation. So it's clear that our allergy testing, as we've gone to mediated release testing, is more accurate. Okay. You'll have people come in and say, I got skin tested. That's just because traditional allergists do skin tests for money. I don't find a good correlation to that. That's really accurate for dander and molds and pollens. It's really not useful for foods in my experience.
Is this test over the counter or by prescription only?
It's by prescription, but a lot of people know how to do it.
Okay.
And probably what you can do is call the number, go on the website, put in your zip code, and get referred to a doctor. And I don't think you have to be a doctor to order it. Maybe it isn't even prescription, because I have nutritionists who order it. So since it's cash, and the insurance companies are not involved, maybe it's not, I know it isn't insured, so maybe it isn't controlled. Okay. And what you do is you go into your local laboratory and have them draw the blood and spin it, and then you put it on ice and overnight it. Very, very nice tool. The whole allergist approach to things, I've had people figure them out on their own as fast as the allergists do. I use allergists for airborne allergens and that kind of stuff. Treatment. Obviously, the number one treatment of allergies is stop eating or breathing them.
Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty straightforward. Okay. Quit exposing yourself. And always, when it's young people, I always go, lose the dairy. Okay, because it's probably still tripping that trigger. Okay, in adults, I don't see that's a big factor. We seem to harden to dairy, and we have other issues with dairy, but they don't seem to be allergic if you don't see it. They always come up in the test, though. If you're allergic as a child, they come up on these MRTs. The second knee-jerk reaction that people have tends to be antihistamines, and they think they're kind of the panacea for allergies. What an antihistamine is we have cells in our blood called mast cells, and they release all kinds of chemicals, bradykinins, SRSs, mastamine, histamine, etc. And we happen to discover that antihistamines block histamine release. But the only thing that blocks the release of all of the things from a mast cell is cortisone, which is going to kill you faster than your allergies, and so isn't a very good idea with a million side effects from cortisone. There is a drug out of Europe called Tranilast, Tranilast, that you can have custom compounded by your pharmacist, but it's not on the market. That is an actual antihistamine and works like an antihistamine, but has the effect of cortisone, but has the side effects of Benadryl. Nice product, use it all the time. But mostly what people need to know about antihistamines is that if you really carefully read the back of the label for antihistamines, they say do not use in an upper respiratory infection or sinusitis, because they make your mucus crystallize and plug up your sinuses. And when somebody has a head cold, I tell them get off antihistamines, use a decongestant expectorant, not something that dries you up.
You mentioned in an earlier recording, those of us who would like to go back and talk about in treatment of it, preventing infections and treating infections, you talked about the necessary flow. Keep things that are supposed to be flowing in your body flowing.
Flowing, right. Okay. Drainage is the management of infection. And so when you get done, you really are only left with the good treatments for allergy are to figure out what they are and avoid them and eliminate them, because there aren't any drugs that we really, really like. They all end up having their problems. All of that was really pointed as we've been talking about food allergies. When we switch over to any other allergen, we're just treating the symptoms now. We're not really, when we're treating congestion, we're really not treating food allergies. We're just using cortisone nose spray to make the reaction not occur on our nasal mucosa and instead cause fungus to grow. When we're taking antibiotics, we're not dealing with the allergies. We're just treating a secondary infection. We're treating the allergen reaction when we treat asthma by using a bronchodilator. in an emergency, cortisone is a great drug. As an ER doc, I used cortisone all the time because it beats dying. But for chronic therapy, obviously, it is the most dangerous drug in the world.
What about, I haven't heard you yet talk about as a treatment option, you've been talking about various drugs, but what about this idea that we've heard people go all the time to their allergist for shots to basically build up a tolerance or a low-dose immunotherapy?
Desensitization.
Desensitization, yeah.
Right. And that, not for foods. That doesn't work for foods.
Okay.
That works for airborne pollens and danders, but we haven't been able to desensitize foods. There's some neat stuff coming out on peanuts. There's just this year some new research that we may have found a way to orally slowly desensitize peanuts, which is great because people die suddenly from peanuts. But it's really avoidance. And it's really all that we have. So when you really get done, you go, well, okay, if I'm down to avoidance, how do I back the truck up? How do I take this 20 years that I didn't know and I'd messed up my gut? And I go, well, first question is, do you have hydrochloric acid in your stomach? Okay, how do I know that? Well, I can go get a Heidelberg test, which nobody does anymore, which is you actually swallow a pill that measures your pH and wear a radio on your belt that transmits to it. Really what we do now is we tell people to go buy betaine. Betaine is a plant that has hydrochloric acid in its leaves, and take betaine, and if the first one you take burns your stomach, you got enough acid. Okay. But if as you take it, your digestion improves and you feel better, figure out your dose because you need more hydrochloric acid. Okay? This is the reason why people like mother of vinegar. What they're doing is they're taking a mild acid because they lack a strong acid. And that's one of the reasons why people who take a tablespoon of organic vinegar twice a day improve their health. There are a lot of other things. We think that also probably stimulates and increases the production of gastric acid. So that's worth a try. Okay? The second thing is, do digestive enzymes help? Okay? And taking broad digestive enzymes with every meal and asking the question for one bottle, is my bloating and everything better? I go, good, do that. Okay, you want to get every one of these things in place. And then the third thing you need to do is you need to take that gut that was damaged with antibiotics and you need to get in probiotics. And we probably touched on this, but let's do it again. We all take probiotics wrong. We get probiotics in three forms. We either go to the health food store and get capsules, or we buy yogurt, or we buy kefir. Okay? Each one of those has its inherent problem. The problem with the yogurt and the kefir is the bacteria that are in it were not bred to replace your gut flora. They were bred to create a particular flavor so that they sell. Okay? Really good yogurt doesn't taste good. Okay? And the capsules are double down on stupid because they were made in Phoenix last September and put in a bottle, and one night they sat in the back of a semi in Texas at 125 degrees, and then they went through Minnesota in February and got frozen, and then finally they sat in their plastic bottle with no oxygen for 3 months at GNC, and then you're going to pop these things out, dehydrated, and you're going to pop them in your mouth and they're going to hit pure hydrochloric acid. It's a miracle that they work at all. But if you really want to watch probiotics work, I have had patients with Crohn's disease stop bleeding in 12 hours from one dose of probiotics by taking a product like Orthomolecular's Orthobiotic 4000 bulk powder, or you can get it in capsules, and get out a yogurt recipe, not with dairy, not with bovine dairy, but with goat, or people are trying to do things with coconut milk and almond milk, etc. They never really give you a very nice texture the way that
animal milk
does, okay. Preferably goat, right? Camel makes incredible yogurt. We have a guy with 27 cows and 5 bulls up just north of us here, and it's the best milk in the world. When you give it to people, they go, that's the best milk I've ever had.
You're talking about camels.
Camel milk, yeah. And there was just an article in the World News about the fact that camel milk's making a big comeback in the Middle East, and people are realizing they have an asset. And so you instead of putting yogurt into your yogurt recipe to make your yogurt, you put in a couple capsules of your best probiotic. Now you've taken 2-month-old freeze-dried bacteria, and in 30 minutes, they're now brand new bacteria. And instead of getting 1 billion units, you're going to get 100 billion units because of duplication. And I've had people take a tablespoon of this stuff who've been bleeding for 6 months from their inflammatory bowel disease and stop bleeding from their very first dose, and over 7 days have their symptoms drop by 75%. And they'll be the first people to come in and tell me, Doc, have you tried that yogurt? And I go, yeah, I've smelled a lot of it and I've tried some of it. And they go, it's just awful. I mean, it's like school glue on steroids. And they go, but I don't care. I don't care because it's working, okay? And so, you tell an allergist that the management of a patient's problems is betaine leaves and digestive enzymes and make your own yogurt.
Camel milk yogurt.
Yeah, and they're gonna go, you are certifiably insane. Would you like a cortisone shot? And so, but in the end, it's clean your food up, because remember that what this GMO thing is about is, in the end, the last line of my long story about GMO is that we gave genetically modified bacterial information to our own bacteria, and when they now see Roundup trigger in their food, our own gut bacteria now make Roundup. And we now have the ability to manufacture Roundup in our gut. That's what I understand GMO really boils down to, okay, except for the gluten GMO, which is about an indigestible protein. And so, and there's another one. Another reason why we've now, in the last 10 years, ever since Borland got the Nobel Prize for a rust-resistant wheat,
right,
now we've got this new gluten gut enteropathy thing with another gut leak. And so everybody and I hear it all the time from my patients. They come in, they say, I just can't settle my gut down. And I go, just for 2 weeks, no gluten. Do no gluten, and ask what happened. And they come in and say, oh, I'm like 20 points higher IQ. That's the morphones in your brain. You like living on narcotics, eat gluten, okay? And they go, my energy's up. And I go, yeah, and if we looked, your testosterone's up, your thyroid's higher, okay? Your DHEA's up, your cortisol's stabilized, and all their gut symptoms are gone and they don't hurt. And so all of these things, and you can see why the allergists are just going, here's your antihistamines, here's your cortisone nose spray, and would you like a cortisone shot with that? Because that just takes you can't do that on a 3-minute visit. It takes a long time to get people to understand this stuff.
And it's getting to be very difficult to create that kind of a lifestyle that has that clean of a diet, given the changes that
and it
in
takes
the food
money.
That's available. It's true.
It's very expensive. I printed my last 50 articles I saved on allergies, and I see eco-friendly surfactant in cosmetics is the contact allergen of the year, 2017. Asthma caused by antibiotics used before age 6 months. Antibiotics in infancy linked to late onset eczema. Allergies are increasing, no idea why, 2013. 2013, the American Academy of Family Practice had no idea, after what I just said for the last half hour. Their official answer is, beats me, okay? Early antibiotics cause food allergies. We got to talk about alternative therapy. My partner, has stayed in the forefront of alternative allergies. We all call traditional allergist care Allergy 1, and we call alternative allergies Allergy 2 in our industry. And I was the head of the investigational board for the largest EPD study ever done in the United States. And we had a guy by the name of Len McEwen in London who figured out that if you take what you're allergic to and you attach it to hyaluronic acid and you inject it, it will go back into your bloodstream, and the T cell that remembers, every T cell remembers an allergen. And it will, if it's peanut, it will take that peanut back to the T cell that knows you're allergic to peanut, and hyaluronic acid will kill the cell. And I've had patients who've had one allergy shot from my partner and had all their allergies go away. And then we developed the next level. We talked about this on our last thing, and these were some of the first people to do injectable peptides. And there are peptides that stop allergies. And you can do a peptide shot every 8 to 12 weeks and have all your allergies go away. The problem with peptide therapy is it makes lazy patients because they don't do the modifications, and eventually the peptides quit working because they didn't change the underlying problem and they lose their best tool. And we're watching more and more interesting allergic therapies come out. There is a program now called SRT that has linked energy medicine at the time that you administer the injection and makes stuff more effective. It was actually invented by a lady who used to work for me in my urgent care center in Sandusky. A lot of people go to their ear, nose, and throat person with an allergic cough, and they're always told the same thing now. Oh, you've got reflux. You need Nexium. You need omeprazole. You need pick it. Okay, pick the proton pump inhibitor. And I got an article here that did the definitive work on the fact that that doesn't really work. But the real problem is that all of those drugs all cause osteoporosis and are addicting, and when you stop them, now you need them. And so, you know, the ENT guys are handing these things out like they're M&Ms with no side effects, and they're terrible. So everybody wants to watch that one. Here's a word that has not come up in all of this, and there are people listening to this who are groaning because we missed it, and that's Candida. Okay? If you're going to kill all your good bacteria, you're going to get bad bacteria, but you're also going to get an overgrowth of Candida albicans, and now in this era, other Candida, glabrata, rotella,
and that's a yeast.
The yeast, all
that's
the fungi.
It's also known as Candida.
Candida, yeah.
Okay.
And we said the other day, both pronunciations are correct. If you get 100 doctors, 50 will say one, 50 will say the other. And Candida is sensitizing. When I was in medical school and residency, we had just come out of the era where we'd invented cortisone, amoxicillin, and sequential birth control pill, and those three drugs together cause yeast. And that was what really caused the growth of the alternative medicine industry, because traditional doctors didn't know what yeast was. And we actually called them yeast doctors. Okay, and you went to your doctor and he taught you how to get rid of yeast, and you had, Bill Crook's book, The Yeast Connection, and you had John Trowbridge's book, Yeast Syndrome, and these were brilliant clinicians who wrote a book that let people make themselves well. And in my era of that, we're having an epidemic of lupus in this country. Lupus erythematosus, elevated SED-RA positive, ANA, arthritis, lupus cerebritis. Once I got in practice with my partner, he told me, I don't believe in lupus. He says, it's all Candida. And I kind of went, really? You think everybody has Candida? And he went, yeah, it's true, I do. I went out and started treating people for Candida who had lupus. And my most amazing cases would blow you away. I had people who were on 100 milligrams of prednisone, and I had them in 6 months on no therapy with a normal SED rate and a negative ANA, just by doing the things we talked about, fixing the gut. And I don't know why, but we don't see nearly the lupus we used to. I don't know what happened. I think the breed of Candida changed. We talked about sinusitis last time. I'm going to ignore it. That was a pretty good list. I'm glad I printed that. That had a couple good ideas.
Before we get off the hook, though, we want to talk about, from a preparedness standpoint, all of this has been with the assumption on most people's part that they have access to the pharmacy, to the clinic, to the hospital. But a lot of what you've been guiding us to is not dependent. The solutions you've proposed are not generally dependent on the pharmacy, the clinic, and the hospital. So does that mean that from a preparedness standpoint, people can be more confident?
No, because we're talking about prevention. From a preparedness point of view, I have things that I want people to own, okay? Because what I don't want to do is be hunkered down and waiting out till the crisis blows over and not be able to get somebody emergency care and have to take them out into whatever we think we might have to go into. And so I have a number of drugs that I want in that first aid kit, okay? One of the things I want is very high potency cortisone pills, okay? I want them high potency for two reasons. A doc's only going to give you so many, so you can always break them in quarters or eighths, so you get more. And two, if somebody's dying, I want high potency for at least a couple doses, okay? So I want prednisone. I want prednisone 20 milligrams, hopefully get 40, 60 tablets, put them away, okay? Cortisone is a life-saving drug. As an ER doc, you know, I used it more than almost any other drug to stop severe reactions. I want to make sure that I have antihistamines. The best antihistamine in the world is Benadryl. Every antihistamine is less potent than Benadryl and less safe. Okay? The reason we don't use Benadryl is because it's sedating. Well, in an emergency, I don't care about sedating, I care about potency. And so, yeah, store up what you want for the allergies you are going to treat to keep you from sniffing that I told you not to take. But if you're dying, I want Benadryl, oral. If you can get somebody to give you a few vials of injectable Benadryl, I would get it. Okay? Definitely a great tool. The third thing is a good inhaler. Better yet, a nebulizer, because people who are sick can't use inhalers well, and they're not trained to use them, so they fail at them. Better yet is to own one of those nebulizers you can buy online, and then go get your doctor to write you Combivent, which is modified adrenaline with a anticholinergic drug called ipratropium. And that is the greatest bronchodilator in the world and will stop any asthma attack. And my last drug is epinephrine. And right now we have a nationwide epinephrine shortage, and doctors are even not doing some procedures because they use epinephrine in their lidocaine to stop bleeding and they can't get it. But I used to be able to buy a 25-pack of ampules of epinephrine for like $5. And then that's crazy because it's the same thing in an EpiPen for $600. So I had like $30,000 worth of epinephrine in this $5 box. Talk about a markup. And anything that you can do, I don't care if it even has to be that EpiPen, but better off is to own a bottle of epinephrine and TB syringes that you can measure the small amounts, 0.1 to 0.2 cc's, of 1 to 1,000 subcutaneous, and you can keep people alive with that stuff. You can break a severe allergic reaction. You could treat asthma with that epinephrine, although the person would sit there and shudder and shake and have tremors and think a bomb went off beside them, but it won't kill them and it'll stop the asthma. We use epinephrine in the ER. And so those are really the drugs that we're really, really concerned about. Those are the things that we want to be stockpiling.
These are all by prescription only, so they've got...
Except the Benadryl.
Benadryl's over the counter. You can get that. In fact, I know Costco sells big bottles of that stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Capsules that have longer shelf life than the liquid or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. But the other thing is you'd need to find a doctor who's willing to work with you to help provide that so that you can have it on hand as a family.
And I think the only way that's going to happen is if you go to a doctor you have history with. You know, if you only really have three choices. Go to a doctor who's a prepper, okay? Go to a doctor who thinks you're nuts but also wants to keep your business and is invested in you and goes, okay, I'll humor you. Or go to a doctor who thinks you're nuts and doesn't care about you and you're not going to get anything. That's your three choices. And so if you really have a long-standing relationship and go in and don't shoot for the moon, go, you know, I'm just concerned, you know, that the power could go out for a couple weeks and we could see some chaos out there, and I just would like to have, you know, and keep your list down to the 5 or 6 important things that keep you alive, you know, a good antibiotic, the steroids, the epinephrine, you know, something to stop vomiting, Reglan. They might give you some of that. They're not going to write it as liberally as I do with the preppers that are in my practice. We really need to get a prepper medical society going. That'd be an interesting concept. Any other tips besides avoiding food allergens? I mean, you talked about
food allergens dominated most of the discussion, and we've given less attention to topical or aerosol, airborne allergens.
Well, the topical one is pretty easy. That's dirty chemicals. This week I've seen a neomycin contact dermatitis, and this week I've seen a printer's ink from reading papers. Okay. Bounce fabric softener last week. So, we're being drenched in all these chemicals, and we want to learn not to do that. And most of us are getting pretty good at that. We're getting paranoid enough to go, I don't want the chemicals in my life. And so we're, I think we're okay, on that score. I talked about the asthma some. In the end, it's always the same answer. Find it and avoid it. Find it and avoid it. We've talked on some of the other shows. If you came into me and said, I'd really like to screw my allergic and endocrine system up as quickly as possible, I'd go put a Glade air freshener in all your outlets. Nothing like a good neuroendocrine disruptor. Pick yourself up a couple cases of bottled water, okay? And you should be good. All your hormones will shut down. You're just going to be messed up. And so, all these fragrances, and you see it, people who are allergic, when you get enough of that going, you develop a new syndrome called multiple chemical sensitivity, and you can't drive down the road behind a smoky truck, and you can't walk into a building. This whole office, thankfully, is 1981. And so, carpet vacuum. There's another one. You want to make your life healthier? Don't ever carpet your home. If you want to carpet your home, buy your carpet, have them deliver it to you in the summer, and unroll it upside down in your yard in July and let the UV finish baking the carpet back in. They're bringing this carpet off of the mills with the glue still sticky. They're running that mill as fast as they can that the next time it comes around the roll, it doesn't stick to the fibers. It's still off-gassing, and you can feel that. There are certain places that you walk in your life, Walmart, and everything on the shelves has just had the plastic cut off of it, and I'll walk in and be behind my wife, and I go, I'm not going down here. Yep. The pesticide aisle.
Absolutely. You can taste it, feel it.
You can.
And we're finding more and more as we travel, very difficult in many hotels. They will routinely, the last step that the housekeeping crew does after, it's like tying a bow on the room, as they spray this perfume and then the carpeting and so on. So we have this laundry list of questions that we ask.
Right.
There are special requests, and if you say it, we've got a chemical sensitivity, we've got allergies, I need to talk to the head of housekeeping. Then you call when you make the reservation, you call the day before, you call the day of, talk to the head of housekeeping and say, don't do it. And they're starting to get to be where you can tell they've heard this before.
Right.
They're starting to go, oh, you're one of those. Okay, we'll use the hot water cleaning rather than the funny sprays or whatever cleaning. And then also, we just went to an RV show recently, and there was
a great big plastic thermos bottle full of off-gassing.
Oh my gosh, there were some
brand new. They want you to see the brand new.
Couldn't even walk through some of those.
Couldn't walk through them.
Until I read an article when we got home that said, "Are you embalming your family when you go camping?" So,
yeah.
There's some of those things. It's getting more and more difficult to avoid. Cars used to be, the interior of automobiles used to be made out of metal, wool, and ivory and then things like that. But now it's all plastic.
Right. Absolutely. Jan will. When we're at the airport and we have to go through Miami in the D conduit course, there are two 100-foot wide perfume.
On your Haiti trip.
Yeah, we have to go past two 100-foot long perfume
diffuser
businesses. Oh. And it's just a death of me. And all of my team knows it. And I sit there and hyperventilate. I know exactly where it's going to hit me. And then I take a deep breath and I take off running, okay, and try and get the 200 feet to the other side as far as I can get before I take a breath. And it's just awful. And it's just like a gauntlet at the airport. And there's no way around it. My gate is beyond that gauntlet.
Some of the stores in the mall are that way too. Abercrombie and Fitch. I'm trying to think of some others that they just spray.
Swan Creek Candles. I can't even park in front of them.
Yankee Candle Company.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Right.
Oh my gosh.
Bed Bath and Beyond.
Yeah, I can't go in Bed Bath & Beyond.
The perfume section that you have to walk through, even at JCPenney or other places, to get from
and
the
they put it
parking lot.
right at the entrance, so you can't get past it.
right.
But if you step in, it's in 50 feet. If you step in, cut behind the first thing that closed, go all the way over to the wall and walk all the way around, you can get around it.
It's tough. But more workplaces are becoming either fragrance-free, or at least they know what you're talking about when you
Your printers are putting things out. They're putting out topical sensitizers that cause a lot of contact dermatitis. One of the things that I do is every morning before I enter the industrial world of medicine, all my products have all been printed, is I take plain, always brand name, never not brand name Vaseline, and I work Vaseline into my hands. And what it does is it gives me a barrier to keep things from getting into my body.
We've been told, and you mentioned plastic water bottles with hormones and all that in a previous discussion at some length. We've been told that even the thermal printed receipts that we're constantly handling now are...
They're awful.
That they're
thermal printing's terrible.
BPA.
Thermal printed paper is terrible, right?
And quite commonly, you go to one of these healthy Panera or whatever restaurants, you pay, you hand you a receipt, you touch the receipt with your hand, you go sit down and eat your sandwich right now.
Right.
The same fingers, the same skin that just touched the BPH.
Sometimes to make that point, what I'll do to the person at the register is I'll go, could you just tuck that in there for me? Okay, because I don't want to touch it. And they'll go, why not? And I go, because it's really bad for me. Okay? And I just tuck it in my pocket. And as you walk away, you can see them looking down at the roll on the thing and kind of going, what is it? I don't know. You know. Yeah, we're living in a chemical. We're living my microbiology professor in medical school said the only true thing he said in all the time he taught me microbiology, as far as I could tell, was that the world is covered in a fine layer of shit. And I would now add, and heavy metals, and endocrine disruptors.
And GMOs.
Yeah, GMOs.
Well, we're out of time, but once again, we have to thank you, Dr. J. Nielsen, MD, our off-grid doctor, for enlightening us on the pitfalls and promise of how we can try to avoid and sometimes treat when necessary allergies. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.